Number 7. Tyshawn Hightower. Roughly a week after he'd entered his name into the 2020 NBA draft, a gifted college basketball player was taken into police custody on murder charges. 21-year-old Tyshawn Hightower, a guard for Tulane University, was identified as a suspect in the fatal shooting of 24-year-old Georgia man Devontae Long. Prior to transfer into Tulane, Hightower, a native of Georgia, had played 2 seasons for the Georgia Bulldogs. He was one of 6 people suspected to have been involved in the killing, with the list including his brother Jeffrey. The shooting of Long took place on April the 8th at an apartment complex in Spindletop Way, Stockbridge, shortly before 11 a.m. According to an arrest warrant obtained by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Long had allegedly pistol-whipped a man named Tyreek Farmer during an altercation earlier in the morning. The latter called for assistance and Hightower arrived at the apartment complex along with the others accused in the case. They confronted Long in a breezeway, and his girlfriend would later report seeing Hightower pull out a turquoise and black handgun out of his pocket. She then ran to hide in the apartment and heard gunshots. Later that evening, the basketball star tweeted out, "God protect my people," a message that investigators suspected had been connected to the shooting. While detectives pointed to Hightower as the gunman, his attorney, Averick Walker, claimed that the authorities were trying to make him out to be a monster. Walker reported that it was actually Jeffrey Hightower who'd fired the weapon and that he'd done so in self-defense. The legal representative mentioned that Jeffrey and the others had a right under state law to stand their ground, as Long had emerged from the apartment with a gun that he pointed at the college athlete. No convictions had been made, and the investigation was ongoing as of the latest updates on the matter. Number 6. Avante Williams. Avante Williams, a sophomore safety for the Miami Hurricanes, was arrested and charged with 1 count of aggravated battery on a pregnant woman in July of 2021. As Williams left for football practice, he and his girlfriend, who was 31 weeks pregnant with his child at the time, had gotten into an argument about his new relationship. In subsequent interviews with the police, Williams would refer to the unnamed woman with whom he lived and had 2 other children as his ex. During the verbal exchange, he'd reportedly told her to leave the apartment they shared in the West Kendall area by the time he returned from practice. Williams then flew into a fit of rage when he found her still packing at the apartment when he came back. The football player was reported to have grabbed the mother of his children by the hair and thrown her around the apartment before pushing her outside, causing her to fall and hit her head on the pavement. The woman, who was later treated for bruising to her neck and arms at West Kendall Hospital, alerted a neighbor and they called 911. Williams was taken into custody and immediately suspended from all team activities at the University of Miami. Number 5. Danielle Puddifoot. In April of 2015, a University of Bridgeport women's soccer player assaulted a teammate over what police reported had been a perceived snub at an awards ceremony. 22-year-old senior Danielle Puddifoot, originally from Slough, England, had already been drinking on April the 30th prior to attending a sports awards banquet at the Connecticut University. Another athlete had received the Coach's Player Award, which upset Puddifoot. The young woman felt that she'd been repeatedly passed over, as she hadn't received any official recognition during her 4 years playing for the team. Puddifoot was already heavily intoxicated by the time she went to a post-banquet dorm party, where she reportedly began berating her teammates. An altercation ensued between Puddifoot and 18-year-old Haley Marquis. Puddifoot headbutted the teen, and the strike was delivered with such force that Marquis was knocked over 2 chairs and onto the floor. She was left with facial swelling and 2 black eyes. Puddifoot then continued slamming her own head against the wooden wardrobe closets in the room. After a struggle, Puddifoot's teammates got her into the hallway, where she began ramming doors and walls with her head until she passed out. The young woman was arrested and charged with 3rd-degree assault and disorderly conduct. She was subsequently granted accelerated rehabilitation by a Bridgeport Superior Court judge, with her charges to be dismissed upon the successful completion of 1 year of probation. Number 4. Michael Harris. In February of 2020, an employee at a business in Grove City, Ohio, called the police to report that an aggressive man refused to leave their building, noting that he appeared to be unaware of his surroundings. He would later be identified as college football player Michael Harris, a linebacker at Eastern Kentucky University. 2 officers arrived at the scene, and a confrontation that took place outside of Harris's vehicle was captured by their monitoring equipment. Officer Carrie Rose, who was trained as a crisis negotiator, was the first at the scene and talked with Harris for several minutes, noting that he was agitated and unable to stand still. A male colleague of Rose's then approached Harris, who kept his arms raised but continued exhibiting erratic behavior. Both officers then decided to handcuff him, suspecting he was under the influence. Before he could be restrained, however, Harris pushed the male officer away and tried to get back in his car. Fearing an escalation of the altercation, the officer pepper sprayed Harris, but it proved ineffective as he pulled the hood of his sweatshirt over his face. Then, as Rose and her colleagues struggled to handcuff a crouched Harris, the football player lifted the male officer high into the air and then slammed him into the concrete, falling to the ground with him. Efforts to restrain the 6'3", 245-pound athlete continued with the intervention of Rose and that of a third officer who approached the scene from a separate cruiser. Lieutenant Eric Scott with the Grove City Police Department described the officer at the scene as a very strong man in his own right, but quoted him describing the altercation with Harris as saying, "I cannot believe the strength this man had." The college athlete was successfully taken into custody and charged with assault against a police officer, a felony in Ohio, as well as with resisting arrest and disorderly conduct while intoxicated. A digital scale and drugs were also allegedly found in his vehicle. Number 3. Emily Hayes and Corinne Varney. Two volleyball players from Florida Atlantic University were arrested and charged with grand theft in April of 2017. Emily Hayes and Corinne Varney had entered a Macy's retail store in the town center of Boca Raton with Pacific Sunwear bags that were relatively empty. Luca Rispoli, the store's asset protection representative, had reportedly noticed suspicious activity on behalf of the students in the women's activewear department. The pair had entered several fitting rooms and two Macy's employees subsequently determined that a number of items were missing. Rispoli noticed that Hayes and Varney had emerged with their bags considerably larger. They'd allegedly passed all points of sale and made no attempts to purchase the concealed merchandise, the combined worth of which was estimated at $1,400. Rispoli recovered the items, and the two prominent college athletes were arrested by the police, charged with theft and issued trespass warnings for Macy's. They were described as extremely remorseful by the responding officers. It's unclear what type of punishment they received from FAU's athletic program, but both were set to appear at the 15th Judicial Circuit of Florida Court in Palm Beach County in June of that same year. Number 2. Kamaya Street. A promising basketball player at Georgia's Kennesaw State University was charged with robbery and murder, along with 4 other suspects, in November of 2019. On July the 16th of that year, businessman Nashim Hubbard Etienne, aged 21, was gunned down at the Heritage Station Apartments in Atlanta. While her role remained unspecified, 21-year-old star athlete Kamaya Street would later admit to her involvement after she was identified by the Atlanta Police Department through surveillance footage of the homicide. It was reported that Street's group had begun shouting at Hubbard Etienne and an unidentified man accompanying him as they emerged from a car in the apartment complex's parking area. The former suffered fatal gunshot wounds, but some sources proposed he'd been the collateral victim of an ongoing dispute. In an interview with the media, Mayanne Hubbard Armster, the deceased mother, reported that the other man had been the intended target of the shooting as he'd allegedly owed money to Street from a game of dice. Hubbard Armster also noted an utter lack of remorse on the sportswoman's part as she returned to playing basketball in the murder's aftermath. Street's accomplices were named as Don Tobias Bradley, Jonathan Gilstrap, Tobias Wells, and Cortez Banks. All but Bradley were apprehended within months of the shooting. Street was arrested just days after she'd been named Player of the Week by the ASUN Conference for the 4th time in her basketball career. She risked spending the rest of her life in prison as her numerous charges included 3 counts of felony murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, and 1 count each of armed robbery and firearm possession. While no further information has been made available since, it's believed that Street might be granted immunity or a more lenient sentence under a deal to testify against the others. Number 1. Rashawn Jones. On the evening of November the 7th of 2006, Brian Patter, a defensive lineman for the Miami Hurricanes, was fatally shot in the head as he got out of his SUV in front of his apartment complex, located about 4 miles from the Miami campus. Investigators determined that the gunman, who'd most likely been lying in wait, had ambushed the college sports star and then fled the scene within minutes. Before his life was cut short, 22-year-old Patter had been only months away from likely being selected in the NFL draft. He was found by his girlfriend, Jada Brody, who'd reportedly heard the gunshots. Police interviewed dozens of people and amassed thousands of pages in the case files before ultimately arresting Patter's former teammate, Rashawn Jones, roughly 15 years after the incident. Multiple reports indicated that their relationship was marred by conflict during their time at the Hurricanes. Jones had previously dated Brody, an aspect that became a source of contention between the two men. 2 months before his death, Patter had reportedly bested Jones in a physical altercation to which the latter reacted by threatening to shoot him. Investigators claim that Jones, aged 35 when he was arrested in 2021, had always been a suspect, but building the case against him required time. After the shooting, a witness had given a description of a man fleeing in the area, and the rendering of a sketch artist closely resembled Jones. The same witness picked him out of a photo lineup in 2007 and again in 2020. On the night of the killing, Jones had missed a mandatory team meeting, and while he claimed to have been at home, cell phone location data placed him near Patter's apartment. The bullet recovered from the victim's head also matched the caliber of handgun that Jones was known to have owned. Thanks for watching. Which day-to-day activity do you think you'd be champion of if it were made into a professional sport? Let us know in the comment section below.